Joining us now, the pollster. Talk about the mother of all midterms. It's the father of all pollsters, Scott Rasmussen. Joining us now. Scott, one day before polls start opening, 24 hours for those who have not voted early. It's great to have you, Scott.
Great to be with you, John. And, you're talking about turnout. That is going to drive the election. There are so many close races. We said this each week on the show that I've been with you. So many close races that a 1 or 2 point shift in voter turnout could mean anything from Republicans hanging on to control in the House of Representatives all the way up to a Democratic gain of perhaps 45 seats. And it's because there are just a lot of toss-up races around the country.
Why are there so many toss-ups, Scott? Like, why?
Well, one reason is that in the technology era that we live in, people are able to identify messages and figure out what's going to work and figure out how to make those races as competitive as possible. And the other reason is there just aren't that many totally up for grabs seats in the election, so all the attention gets focused on a handful of races, and both sides are pulling out all stops. End of the day, we have a large base of votes or of seats in the House that are very committed to Republicans, almost always. We have another group that is almost always going to be a Democratic seat, and these ones in the middle, that's where all the fighting will be.
Now, I have quoted you the last time you were on my show to probably 1,000 times because I just thought it was so insightful. You said, John, the Democrats need 23 seats. 12 of them are done. Mail it in, right? Done. And so that means they need 11, and 30 seats are toss-ups. They need to win 11 of the 30, and 29 of those are in Republican hands. So basically, the Republicans have to win 19 to win control by 1, so the math simply doesn't favor them. And I probably told 1,000 people that over and over and over because that is
the reality. And by the way, I think you've got to put all this in perspective. This is what happens in midterm elections. This is not something unusual that's never happened before. In fact, it's looking fairly competitive for the party in power, but almost always the party that has the White House, and especially when they have Congress as well, faces some struggles in the midterm election.
Why haven't we seen the Trump economy, this tremendous economy? We got another 250,000 jobs created on Friday. We have all this great economic news, one after the other. Why haven't the Republicans been able to capitalize on this?
One weakness has been they haven't really done a great job of connecting their policies to the economic growth. So that's something, and it's something that we see in the polling data all the time. Republicans overwhelmingly think that the policies of the Trump administration and Congress have benefited the economy. They overwhelmingly think the economy is getting better. Democrats tend to be skeptical still about the economy. A plurality of Democrats say the economy is getting worse. That's something that we come up with in our job creators polling each week, and it's very striking. So there has been a failure to connect policy to economic growth, and especially to sell that to those independent voters who ultimately decide these elections. The other answer, though, John, is the economic growth is helping the Republicans. It is the reason that we're talking about a very close race for control of the House rather than a more significant likelihood of the Democratic of a big blue wave.
Oh, so what you're saying then is, okay, so two things. The Republicans could have capitalized on it more, and because they haven't connected the policies to the success. And, of course, you heard that yesterday Obama, I think President Obama in Indiana said, hey, I'm the one that started this all. And he could say that because the Republicans have done such a poor job messaging it. But then the other flip side is you're saying, even though they've not been consistent and salient in connecting the dots with it, it's why they're still competitive, because otherwise they'd be getting blown out, right?
That's right. Look, if we were in a recession right now, we're talking about 60 seats or more to be gained by the Democrats. Having a good economy is always a good thing if you're the party in power. So, and look, we're talking about the House here, and the in the House, the race is very close. In the Senate, things aren't that tight. It looks like, even under a worst-case scenario, the Republicans will retain control of the Senate and probably pick up some seats. Now, there are 5 races that are so close, I wouldn't be surprised if either candidate won them. But if you look at them collectively, you would expect the Republicans to win most of them.
Okay, so I'm predicting that the Republicans pick up 5 seats in the Senate, so I'm probably more bullish on that than anybody because these are all red states, and I know for a fact, being part of the effort, that the Trump voters have been targeted there. I know they're going to turn out. So when I see these close races, the only one that I'm concerned about is Nevada because that always looks good and then we lose. But I think Heller's going to hang on in Nevada, and then I think we're going to win Arizona, hold serve in Tennessee. And, Scott, there's a lot of fake polls out there. I was in Tennessee yesterday. Obviously, there was a rally there. Mm-hmm. And so get the Commercial Appeal, which is the Scripps-Howard paper in Memphis, and they got a new poll, and they say the race is tied between Blackburn and Bredesen. Now, every poll that I've seen had her up by 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All of a sudden, you get up one day, it's tied, and nothing has happened. I mean, it would be like, okay, if there was a scandal or she fumbled or she was a disaster in a debate, like nothing happened. How do you go from up 9 to tied on Sunday? How do you do that?
Well, look, this is why you look at a group of polls, not a single poll. It's why you look at the overall storyline. And in Tennessee, there are 2 reasons to believe the Republicans pick up that or keep that seat. The first is most of the polling shows Blackburn with a good lead. The second is it's Tennessee. Political gravity matters a lot. And, if it's a Republican-leaning state, somebody like Blackburn will have the edge. Those undecided voters in all those polls, some of them will stay home and not vote, but the rest will tend to vote in the direction of the state's political leanings. And that, by the way, is the reason that your skepticism about Dean Heller or concern about Dean Heller is appropriate. Yes, he is narrowly leading in the polls, but it's a state where Republicans typically underperform their polls. Right. And it's also a state that, Dean Heller is the only Republican incumbent running in a state won by Hillary Clinton. Right. So it's a tough environment there. It is still a toss-up. If I look at all the close races, the 5 that I would consider toss-ups right now, Dean Heller is the most vulnerable Republican in that group. In Arizona, I think Martha McSally has the advantage, and I would be, while nothing would shock me in a close election, I think she is probably the most likely of the toss-up Republicans to win, followed closely by Hawley in Missouri and Braun in Indiana. And then you've got Rick Scott in Florida, and Florida is always a toss-up.
Yeah, I think Scott wins. I mean, his response for the hurricane was tremendous. He did a great job there. And Bill Nelson not running an inspiring campaign. I think Rick Scott wins there. But again, I think Tester's going to lose Montana, even though the polls are showing him ahead. I just don't see that race. I don't see him hanging on there. So those are my picks. But a lot of these, we're going to be up late, right?
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you the scenario that the real political junkies who just like the sport of it rather than the implications of it would love most of all, and that is if the race is very close for control of the House of Representatives. 5 of the toss-up districts in that race are in California, which number 1 means the polls don't close until late, and number 2. It may take several days to count the votes. So we may, if it's very competitive, if it's not clear which party is going to win, those 5 races may not be decided for a few days, and that would be a cliffhanger.
No question about it. The scene of the big day tomorrow. It is the mother of all midterms. Scott Rasmussen with us. Go to scottrasmussen.com for more information on his polling. scottrasmussen.com. That's 2 S's. Scott, on your generic ballot, and then I've got some questions here from our callers I'm going to get to. On your generic ballot, you've got, as of Saturday, the Democrats 50%, Republicans 42%. Explain what that means.
In a national survey, if the election were held today, would you vote for the Republican or the Democrat in your district? It gives you a good sense of the political mood. And of course, the challenge with all polls at this time of year is figuring out who is going to show up and vote.
Right.
If the Democrats actually win the popular vote on Tuesday, when all the votes are counted, by 8 points, they would end up winning a narrow majority in the House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. There's not a precise correlation, but I think most analysts would say that if the Democrats win by 5 or 6 points, it's a toss-up. Republicans could have a very good chance of taking control. If it gets to 7 or 8, it's still close, but the Democrats probably win it. And, of course, if the turnout for Democrats is even better, well, then the results would get more favorable to the Democratic Party.
All right. I got a couple questions here, Scott Rasmussen, from our callers. I can't get to all of them, but I get to some. Nick in Virginia Beach says, could Menendez lose New Jersey?
It could happen. I spent a lot of my life living in New Jersey. I would be shocked if it really happened. But it's one of those things. Democrats are concerned. They've poured $7 million into the race in the last couple of weeks. They are concerned about a lack of competitive House races in urban areas that could depress turnout there. So if you're looking for a place to say, where will you watch a surprise, that might be a place to look. Still don't think it will happen, but at the end of the day, it's a race to keep an eye on.
Yeah, the last thing I remember about New Jersey, I was growing up there, and my father loved some congressman that ran for governor in Cape May. The guy's name was Charles Sandman. He said he was going to win. He got beat by like 25. I don't even know when that was. That had to be in the 60s, Scott, or something. I date you on that. Okay, let's see. Another one we've got here, if I get to it really fast. Den in Chesapeake says, I am very curious. Please ask Mr. Rasmussen how they obtain their poll results. How do they deal with the fact that a large percentage of those they call do not answer? How do they count for the fact that some will lie?
Well, the first part of that for me is easy because we are doing all of our polling on a digital platform. We are not calling people on the phone. There's a debate in the industry as to whether phone polling is dead or merely dying, but it is a very difficult process these days when only 49% of households even have a landline and hardly anybody picks up a cell phone to talk to somebody. So phone polling is on the way out. We are using digital results all the way through. In terms of, I get asked a lot about how do you detect when people are lying, or what do you do if people lie to the pollsters? And I'm sure there are a few people out there who do. But for the most part, if you convince somebody that you're doing a legitimate survey, not trying to sell them something, people want their voice heard. And what you find more common perhaps than people lying is people hesitating and saying they're not sure when they do have a candidate preference. The bigger challenge, though, in all of this is getting a good sample. One of the things that happened in some of the state polls in 2016 is they did not get enough voters without a college degree. If you just do a generic survey, you will get too many people with a college degree, too many people with a graduate degree, and you have to work to get a more reliable sample.
The industry is moving towards more digital-based polling,
right,
which means you've got to be connected. You got to be on the internet. You got to be social media. You got to respond to emails. It can't go in your spam. Not an easy thing to do.
Or text, or there's other ways to reach people. And, there are some, and again, you have challenges here because older people are a little less likely to be connected.
Right.
People in rural areas, so you have to adjust for that as you go through. Polling is very easy in theory. It is very difficult in practice. And I think the other thing that happens is people try to attach too much precision to the results. I tend to look at polls a little bit the way that I look at a hurricane. When a hurricane is coming, and you look at all the different models, if one model says this hurricane's going to hit a few miles north of us and the other one says it's going to hit a few miles south of us, I don't sit there and argue about which model is right. I get ready to have a hurricane come, and you prepare for that event. What the polls tell us today is where to watch the close races. So, yes, even a state like New Jersey, the polls are saying something may be happening there, so you watch it. We have all these other races that we're seeing very close calls on. And again, these are the places to watch on election night.
All right, John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to thank Scott Rasmussen for being with us. Scott, got to pin you down here. I love you to death. Final predictions. How many seats do the Republicans gain in the Senate?
If I had to put a number on, I would say they gain 2 seats, but really it could go anywhere from 1 to 4. And on the House side, the numbers still say the Democrats win a narrow majority.
5?
Yeah, something like that.
All right,
5 to 10. Yep.
Scott says Dems 5 to 10. Republicans can go 1 to 4 in the House. Still doesn't think John Tester will lose. I do. Hope I'm right on that one, Scott, and you're wrong. Love you. Go to ScottRasmussen.com. ScottRasmussen.com. Scott, thanks for being with us.